Most people think getting fired in front of an entire company is the worst moment of your career, unless you still own 51% of the voting shares. William had handed day-to-day operations to his son-in-law years ago, but the board chairman knew something the room didn't. The old man they just humiliated was still calling the shots. William Harlan built Hartwell Manufacturing from nothing. When he let his son-in-law Justin run the company, William didn't retire to a beach. He put on a hard hat and showed up as an unpaid floor consultant. Justin was embarrassed by it, but Justin didn't know the one fact that would turn his whole world upside down. That town hall was supposed to be his moment. It became his destruction. To understand what happened in that room, you need to understand who William Harlan really is. Not the version Justin thought he knew, not the old man in a hard hat who nodded politely and stayed out of the way. The real William. The one who spent 40 years building something Justin would inherit without ever truly grasping what it cost. William started Hartwell Manufacturing in 1982 with a second mortgage on a house his wife had already furnished for a family. He hired his first 5 workers out of a trade school parking lot. For 2 decades, he never took a vacation longer than a long weekend. He never missed a payroll. And he never, ever forgot what it felt like to be the guy on the factory floor, the one who actually made the things that generated the revenue, that paid the salaries, that bought the corner offices Justin now walked through like he was born in them. When William's daughter Emily married Justin 6 years ago, William liked him. Genuinely. Justin was polished, well-spoken, full of ideas. He had an Ivy League confidence that William found almost charming. Almost. There was just one thing. Justin didn't listen. Not really. He nodded while people talked, but his eyes were already moving to the next thing. William saw it early, filed it away, and made a decision he would later revisit in the strangest possible way. 3 years ago, William stepped back from daily operations. He named Justin CEO. The board approved it, partly because William still controlled the votes, but mostly because Justin on paper was ready. He had the credentials. He understood the spreadsheets. What he didn't understand, what no spreadsheet ever taught anyone, was that a company is not a machine. It's a collection of people who choose every single day whether to give you their best or their bare minimum. And people William knew don't follow a title. They follow someone they trust. Justin never learned that. He walked past the factory floor every morning without making eye contact. He called production workers, labor units, in a budget meeting and didn't notice the room go cold. William heard about all of it. He still had friends in the building, old-timers who called him at night. And so William did something that confused everyone, including his daughter. He asked to come back, not as chairman, not as an advisor, as a floor consultant, unpaid. He told Justin he missed the work, missed the hum of the machines. It was partly true, but the deeper truth was that William wanted to know what was happening to his company from the ground up. And he knew the only way to do that was to put on a hard hat and stand in the same rooms Justin never entered. Justin was embarrassed. He didn't say it outright, but the signs were everywhere. He stopped introducing William to visiting clients. He scheduled executive lunches on the days William was on site. And once, when a new hire asked who the white-haired man with the clipboard was, Justin answered without hesitating. Just a retired floor guy, harmless. The story got back to William within an hour. He said nothing. But that night he opened the safe in his study and pulled out the original shareholder documents, the ones that confirmed what no one currently running Hartwell Manufacturing had bothered to remember. William Harlan owned 51% of the voting shares. He had never sold them, never transferred them to Justin or anyone else. He ran the company at Justin's discretion, not the reverse. And with that piece of paper laid out on his desk, he made a quiet phone call to the one man on the board who had been there since the beginning. Leonard Cross, 72 years old, sharp as a blade, and loyal not to the CEO, but to the man who built the entire operation. William told Leonard to be at the next town hall. He didn't say why, he just said, something might need clarifying. Leonard didn't ask questions. He bought a plane ticket that same night. The town hall was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon. It was Justin's idea, a company-wide announcement about restructuring. He had been hinting at changes for weeks, telling his inner circle that the company needed a stronger culture, a more modern identity. Nobody knew exactly what that meant, but Justin had a slide deck, and he was ready. The conference room filled up, 200 employees in rows of folding chairs, the senior team lined up near the front. And somewhere near the back, dressed in his usual flannel and work pants, sat William. He looked like a man who had just come off the floor, wiping grease from his hands onto a cloth he kept in his pocket. Nobody paid him much attention. until Justin stepped to the podium. That's when William noticed something small, something that made his stomach tighten. Justin was wearing a suit William had never seen before, dark navy, tailored sharp, with a tie pin that caught the light. It was the suit of a man who believed he was about to become something more than a CEO, and William realized, in that cold half-second before any words were spoken, that he was about to watch his son-in-law try to erase him, publicly, completely, and he had no idea what was already waiting for him. Justin tapped the microphone twice and flashed the smile that had charmed investors and boardrooms for years. He started with the usual things: quarterly results, market headwinds, pivot toward operational efficiency. The words were smooth, rehearsed, the kind of language that sounds like leadership until you stop to examine what it actually means. The room listened because they had no reason not to. He was the CEO, he stood at the front. That was enough for most people. Then Justin's tone changed. He started talking about culture, about the need for a more agile, forward-facing organization. He said some people in the company were holding them back, not maliciously, but because they represented an old way of thinking, a slower way. He said it with a sympathetic tilt of his head, the practiced expression of a man who wants you to believe this hurts him as much as it will hurt you. That was when William knew, not suspected, knew. His son-in-law was about to make an example of him in front of 200 people who had no idea what was actually happening. "I believe in transparency," Justin said. Sometimes transparency means making hard calls publicly so everyone understands why we're moving in a new direction. He let the sentence hang, and then his eyes found William near the back of the room. William Harlan has been with this company since its founding. We all respect that. But his role as a floor consultant has not added the value we anticipated. Effective immediately, his position is eliminated. I want to thank William for his years of informal guidance. Security will escort him to collect his belongings. The room went silent in the way a room only silences when something has gone wrong and everyone feels it but nobody can name it yet. 200 people turned in their chairs, heads swiveled toward the back, and there sat William Harlan, grease still dark under his fingernails, his hard hat resting on the floor beside his chair, his face utterly calm, not the calm of a man who didn't understand. The calm of a man who had seen this coming from weeks away and had already made his arrangements. A young security guard near the door shifted his weight awkwardly. He looked at William. William did not stand. He did not protest. He simply folded his hands in his lap and waited. The silence stretched. Justin, still at the podium, let a flash of irritation cross his face. The old man wasn't following the script. He was supposed to be embarrassed. He was supposed to shuffle out quietly and disappear. Instead, William just sat there, patient, like a man watching a play he had already seen the ending to. And then Leonard Cross stood up. Leonard was in the second row, which surprised nobody because Leonard always sat in the second row at company functions. 72 years old, spine straight as a yardstick, wearing the same gray blazer he had worn to board meetings for 2 decades. He had flown in the night before, not telling anyone but William. And now, in a silence so complete you could hear the hum of the overhead lights, he cleared his throat. "Justin," Leonard said. His voice was quiet, unhurried, but it carried. The kind of voice you don't need to raise because everyone leans in when it speaks. Before the security guard does something he'll regret, I think there's a clarification that needs to be made. Justin's smile flickered. The way a screen flickers just before it goes dark. "Leonard, this isn't really the time for board commentary. We can discuss." "I'm not offering commentary," Leonard said. "I'm correcting a factual error." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thin folder. From the folder he removed a single page. It was a copy of the original Articles of Incorporation for Hartwell Manufacturing, dated 1982, stamped and notarized and unmistakably official. He held it up so the room could see, though only a few people near the front could actually read it. "When William Harlan named Justin CEO 3 years ago," Leonard continued, "he transferred operational authority. He did not transfer equity. William Harlan currently holds 51% of the voting shares in this company. That means he controls the board. That means he controls the corporation. That means, Justin, that the man you just publicly fired is the man who can fire you with a single phone call before you finish your coffee tomorrow morning." The sound that followed was not words. It was 200 people processing information so unexpected that their mouths opened but nothing came out. Justin stood frozen at the podium. His hand was still on the microphone. His face had gone the color of spoiled milk. He looked at Leonard. Then he looked at William, still seated in the back, still perfectly calm, still folding his hands like he had nowhere else to be. "You can't," Justin started. "The board approved my position. The transition was, the board approved a CEO," Leonard said, "at William's recommendation, and the board can remove a CEO at William's request. Those are the rules you inherited, Justin, the ones you never bothered to read." Justin's jaw worked, but no sound came. The interim head of HR, a woman named Patricia who had been with the company for 11 years and had always suspected something wasn't right about Justin's version of the chain of command, stood up from her seat near the side exit. She didn't say anything. She just looked at William. She looked at Justin, and then, very slowly, she sat back down. But the look on her face had already told the room everything it needed to know. William finally stood. He didn't rush. He picked up his hard hat, tucked it under one arm, and walked toward the front. The crowd parted without being asked, the way crowds part when someone is moving with an authority that doesn't need to be announced. He stopped next to Leonard. He didn't take the podium. He didn't speak into the microphone. He just stood there shoulder to shoulder with the man who had been his first board member and looked at his son-in-law with an expression that was not anger, not triumph, not even disappointment. It was something quieter, something Justin would spend years trying to understand. "The meeting is over," William said. His voice was low, almost gentle, but it landed like a gavel. "Security can escort anyone out, but not me, not tonight." He paused, then added, "Justin, you'll stay. The board will convene in the small conference room in 20 minutes. Justin didn't move. He couldn't. The man who had just publicly fired his father-in-law was now standing in front of an entire company that had just learned he never had the authority to do it. And every single person in that room understood, with a clarity that landed harder than any shouted accusation, that Justin Hale hadn't just embarrassed an old man in a hard hat. He had embarrassed himself, irreversibly. In front of everyone who mattered. The real question now wasn't whether Justin would keep his job. It was whether he would ever recover from the moment that had just dismantled everything he thought he knew. The room emptied slowly. Employees filed out in a hush that was louder than any applause. They kept stealing glances at Justin, frozen at the podium, and at William, who had not moved from his spot near the front. The young security guard looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. He edged backward through the side door and did not return. Nobody blamed him. Patricia from HR waited near the exit until the last employee had left. Then she walked over to William, paused, and said quietly, "The small conference room is ready. I took the liberty of assembling the board members who are on site." William gave her a single nod. He had always liked Patricia. She paid attention. She understood that a company chart wasn't just lines and boxes. It was a map of who actually held the power. Justin finally let go of the podium. His hands left damp marks on the wood. He didn't look at anyone as he walked toward the conference room. His new suit, the one with the tie pin that had caught the light so confidently 20 minutes ago, now looked like an accusation. The small conference room was exactly large enough for what was about to happen. A long table, 8 chairs, a phone in the center for remote board members to dial in. Leonard Cross sat at the far end. 2 other board members, both flown in quietly at Leonard's request the day before, sat to his left. Patricia stood near the door with a notepad only, because she understood that some meetings don't get formal minutes. William entered last. He closed the door behind him and sat at the head of the table, the chair that Justin usually took. Justin stood for a long moment, unsure. Then he pulled out a chair at the opposite end and sat. The distance between them wasn't just physical. William spoke first. "Justin, before we get to the official business, I want you to understand something. I didn't come back as a floor consultant because I was bored. I came back because I needed to see how you led when you thought I wasn't watching." Justin's jaw tightened. "So this was a test, a trap." "It was a mirror," William said. "I showed you exactly who you thought I was, and you showed me exactly who you are." He paused. "A man who publicly humiliates his wife's father to project authority he never actually earned. That's not leadership. That's theater. And theater only works when the audience doesn't see behind the curtain." Leonard interjected, his voice calm as ever. "Justin, were you aware that William retained majority voting shares?" Justin's silence answered the question before his words did. "I assumed. I was told I had full operational control." "You did have full operational control," William said. "I gave it to you. I never interfered. Not once. I let you make your decisions, sign your contracts, hire your people. Do you know why?" He leaned forward slightly. "Because you're married to my daughter, and I wanted to believe in you. I wanted her to be proud of you. I wanted this company to be something you two could build a life around. That was my mistake. I gave you operational control and assumed you'd earn the moral authority that makes control legitimate. You never did. One of the board members, a woman named Renata Okonkwo, who had been with the company for 18 years and had watched Justin's rise with growing unease, spoke for the first time. Justin, there's a file you don't know about. Leonard and I compiled it over the last 6 months. Employee satisfaction scores have dropped 34% under your leadership. Voluntary turnover among floor staff is at its highest in company history. And when we flagged these numbers for you at the spring board meeting, you called them statistical noise. Justin's face went tight. Those metrics don't tell the whole story. We were restructuring. Transition is always. The transition wasn't the problem, Renata said. The problem was that you kept losing people, good people, the kind of people who build things, and every time someone left, you blamed them, not your management, not your culture, you blamed them. William didn't smile. He didn't gloat. His voice when he spoke again was almost weary. Justin, the board was going to ask for your resignation within 6 months regardless of what happened today. The numbers were that bad. The only reason we hadn't moved yet was because I kept asking for more time. I kept hoping you'd figure it out. The town hall today was your last chance, and you used it to fire me in front of 200 people. The room fell silent. Justin's expression finally cracked. Not into anger, into something smaller, the look of a man who had just been told that the floor he'd been standing on wasn't a floor at all. William didn't let the silence linger. I'm not going to humiliate you any further. That's not how I operate. But I am going to restructure leadership tonight, effective immediately. Renata will become Chief Operating Officer. She's earned it. She knows this company's heartbeat in a way no outside hire ever could. Patricia will step into a new role as Director of Operations with full authority over floor management and hiring. He turned to Justin. You are being offered a demotion, Director of Strategic Initiatives. You'll report to Renata. You'll spend 12 months learning what this company actually is, not what you assumed it was. And I will personally mentor you, not because I'm a forgiving man, because my daughter loves you. And because I still believe, somewhere underneath the arrogance I just watched, there's a leader worth building. Justin stared at the table. The tie pin glinted under the conference room lights, a tiny, meaningless badge of a position that had been stripped away while he sat there. And if I refuse, then we negotiate your exit, William said. Cleanly, quietly, every cent you've earned you keep. Your reputation stays intact, but you'll never set foot in this building again. And I'll have to explain to my daughter why the man she married chose ego over family. No one spoke for a full 20 seconds. Finally, Justin lifted his head. His voice was a dry whisper. I'll take the demotion. The words tasted unfamiliar in his mouth, like a phrase he'd never expected to say out loud. But he said them. And in that moment, William saw something he hadn't seen in Justin's eyes in years. Not defeat. The beginning of humility. William nodded once. Then we're done here. Renata, Patricia, we'll meet tomorrow morning to finalize the transition. Justin, go home, talk to Emily, tell her everything before she hears it from someone else. That part isn't optional. The board members rose. Leonard clapped William on the shoulder as he passed. You did the thing most founders never manage, he murmured. You let him fail without letting the company fail with him. William watched Justin walk out of the conference room alone. The door closed. The building settled into quiet. And for the first time in 3 years, the company was entirely back in the hands of the man who built it, not because he wanted power, because he wanted to make sure the people who came after him understood what they were protecting. The real test he knew would come tomorrow, when Justin had to face Emily, when the story reached the rest of the family, when a marriage hung in the balance between a public disgrace and a private choice. And that was the part no board meeting could ever decide. Justin drove home in silence. The tie pin he had worn so proudly a few hours earlier lay on the passenger seat, removed somewhere between the conference room and the parking lot. He pulled into the driveway 40 minutes later and sat in the car for a long time, staring at the lighted windows of the house he shared with Emily. He had rehearsed the conversation in his head. None of the versions landed softly. Emily was in the kitchen when he walked in. She took one look at his face and set down the spoon she was holding. What happened? She asked. And then, before he could answer, where's my dad? Is he okay? That was the part Justin would never forget. Her first question wasn't about the company or the town hall or even him. It was about her father. Because Emily Harlan had grown up watching William build things while the world told him no, and she knew, with the same bone-deep instinct that had made William trust her with majority shares on her 25th birthday, where the true center of gravity in her family had always been. Justin told her everything, not the version he had planned to tell, the one where he was misunderstood and the board overreacted. The real version. The one where he stood at a podium and humiliated her father in front of 200 people while wearing a tie pin that cost more than the first payroll William ever signed. He said the words without looking away from the kitchen counter. When he finished, the silence was so sharp he could feel it pressing against his skin. Emily didn't yell. She didn't cry. She sat down on the kitchen stool, folded her hands in her lap, and said, very quietly, "My father gave you everything. And you tried to take the one thing he never stopped caring about, his dignity." She paused. "I don't know if I can look at you the same way." Justin didn't argue. He couldn't. Instead, he said, "He offered me a demotion, a mentorship. He offered to teach me what I never bothered to learn." He lifted his head. "I took it, not to save my job, to save who I'm supposed to be for you." Emily didn't answer that night. She slept in the guest room, but she stayed in the house. And staying, William would later tell Justin in a quiet moment, was the first step in a very long rebuilding. The following Monday, Hartwell Manufacturing opened its doors under new operational leadership. Renata Okonkwo moved into the corner office Justin had occupied. Patricia hung a whiteboard in her new workspace with the names of every floor employee she intended to meet personally within the first 2 weeks. And Justin showed up at 7:30 in the morning, wearing a plain button-down shirt, no tie pin, no cufflinks, and knocked on the door of his new office, which was smaller than his old one and considerably closer to the factory floor. William met him there. He was holding a hard hat. "This is yours now," he said. "You're going to wear it every day, not because it's symbolic, because I want you on the floor by 8 o'clock. You're going to learn every machine, every process, every person. And you're going to listen, not perform, listen." Justin took the hard hat. It was heavier than he expected. The first month was brutal, not because the work was hard, though it was, because the silence from the employees was louder than any complaint. They didn't trust him. Why would they? He had been the CEO who called them labor units, who walked past their stations without eye contact, who fired the founder in front of everyone. No memo from HR could undo that. Only time. Only consistency. Only showing up, every day, without fail, without expectation. Justin did it. He showed up when it rained. He showed up when shipments were delayed at 2 in the morning. He showed up when a line worker's wife got sick, and he covered the shift himself, fumbling with the equipment, getting his hands dirty for the first time in his professional life. An old-timer named Hector, who had been with Hartwell since 1988, watched Justin struggle with a stuck conveyor belt for 15 minutes before finally walking over and saying, "Let me show you." That moment mattered more than any boardroom resolution. 6 months into his demotion, Justin stood in the break room pouring coffee and overheard 2 floor supervisors talking. "You know," one of them said, "he's not the same guy who fired Harlan." "I actually think the old man broke him open on purpose." Justin didn't interrupt. He just poured his coffee and walked back to his office, but the words stayed with him. He brought it up one evening when William invited him and Emily to dinner at the house. The tomatoes in William's garden were coming in, and he was proud of them in the way men who have built empires sometimes become proud of simple things. After the meal, Justin and William sat on the back porch. The sun was going down. The air smelled like earth and basil. "Did you know I would fail?" Justin asked. "When you put me in that position, did you already see it?" William took a long sip from a mug of coffee. "I saw a man who had never been tested," he said. "A man who had everything handed to him in a suit and told it was earned. That's not your fault. That's the world we built around you. But I also saw something else." He turned to face Justin. "I saw what you did 3 weeks after the town hall. When Hector got that conveyor belt moving again and you didn't take credit, you thanked him publicly. That's not nothing." Justin stared at the garden. "That felt like the first honest thing I'd done in years." "It was," William said, "and that's why you're still here. Not because you're married to my daughter, because the man underneath the suit turned out to be someone worth building." The surprising detail, the one neither of them saw coming, happened at the company's next annual meeting. William had called everyone into the same conference hall where Justin had once stood at a podium and made the worst mistake of his career. This time, William was at the front. He spoke about the year they had weathered, the changes they had made, the steady climb of employee satisfaction scores back to healthy levels, and then he asked Justin to join him at the microphone. Justin walked up, and 200 employees watched him with expressions that were not hostile anymore. Wary, maybe. But open, that was new. William put his hand on Justin's shoulder and said into the microphone, Most people think I rebuilt this company after that town hall. I didn't. The people in this room rebuilt it. And the man standing next to me spent 12 months learning how to be part of that, not just stand above it. That's the hardest thing a leader can do. Start over, in public, without guarantees. He paused. I'm transferring an additional 10% of my voting shares to a trust in Emily and Justin's name, effective today, but not because I'm retiring again, because I'm finally ready to share the load with someone who understands what it actually weighs. The applause was not immediate. It built slowly, the way genuine recognition often does. It started with Hector, then Patricia, then a few of the floor workers, and then the whole room. Justin didn't cry, but he came close. He shook William's hand, and William pulled him into a brief, firm embrace. Father to son-in-law, founder to successor, not because the title had been earned at the start, because it had been earned through the long, unglamorous months afterward. The marriage survived. Emily had watched the transformation from the closest possible distance, and while the guest room stayed occupied for several weeks, she eventually walked back down the hall one night, sat on the edge of the bed and said, "I'm proud of you." I didn't think I would be again, but I am. Justin held her hand. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. William still wears his hard hat on the floor 3 days a week. He still drives the old truck with the cracked mirror. And when people ask him about the town hall, the moment everyone thought his son-in-law had destroyed him, he smiles the faint half-smile of a man who has always understood something the rest of the room took longer to learn. Public humiliation is only permanent if you let someone else write the ending. William never did. He just waited for the right chapter to correct itself. And when it did, he was already seated in the back of the room, ready to turn the page. William's story isn't really about revenge. It's about what happens when the quietest person in the room has already thought 10 steps ahead. The world teaches us that power is loud, that it wears suits and stands at podiums. But the Harlans of the world know something different. Real power doesn't need to announce itself. It just waits for the right moment to be recognized. Family and business are never truly separate. They're two rooms in the same house, and the walls between them are thinner than anyone admits. Justin learned that the hard way, but he also learned that a second chance, genuinely taken, can rewrite a legacy. Not every son-in-law gets that. Not every founder offers it. The ones who do are building something that outlasts quarterly reports. So the question isn't whether you'd survive a public humiliation like that. It's whether you'd have the patience to let the humiliation teach you something. William did. Justin eventually did. And the company is still standing. That's the part worth remembering. If this story hit different, drop a comment. Tell us about a time you watched someone underestimate the wrong person. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's a good time. We tell stories about family, power, and the moments that change everything. Hit that button. We'll see you in the next one.